what is the Eucharist? Okay, so like, from the outside looking in, or even from the inside looking in, which, we learned fairly recently, a bunch of people sitting in the pews and walking up in the communion line are receiving the Blessed Sacrament, receiving the Lord, and they don't actually think it's the Lord. They think it's like a symbol or something. So I want to challenge you today to consider the possibility that what Catholics teach about the Eucharist, what they say, what their claim is in fact Jesus Christ himself in the flesh. I'm just going to do a quick little thing here, and then I would love to hear from Father Leo Patalinghug as the food expert and a Catholic priest. Here we go. So Jesus, he did some pretty radical stuff. One of those radical stuffs that he did was that he multiplied loaves and fish. You remember that story? And what's interesting about it is he does this thing twice, and both times that he performs this miracle, he follows a formula. He follows a ritual. And, anytime someone's like, what's with all the rituals in the Catholic Church? Jesus isn't into rituals. I'm just like, yeah, but actually, have you read the Bible? Because Jesus is super into rituals. So let's look at, a bunch of people are hungry, thousands of people. He's like, okay, hand me whatever you got. Everyone sits down. He picks up the bread. He lifts it to heaven, gives thanks for it, breaks it. He gives it to his disciples to give to the people. Okay, so a couple things to note there. First, what he did specifically, where he lifts it, gives thanks for it, breaks it, gives it to his disciples. Now note, he didn't actually give any to the people in the audience, the crowd. He gave it to his disciples, the 12 people that were following him, who would later become the first priests and bishops, right? The second time he does this, here's the crazy part, he literally follows the same formula. He picks up the bread, lifts it to heaven, gives thanks, breaks it, gives it to his disciples. In the scriptures, it's very interestingly careful to say that he gives it to his disciples. Jesus himself wasn't standing there passing out the bread to the audience. Why does he give it to the disciples and doesn't pass any out? It's not because he's lazy. He's not that kind of leader. It's to illustrate for us, because he is the master teacher, to illustrate for us something super profound that his disciples didn't even understand was happening at the time. All right, so following, he does the same exact formula. A crazy miracle happens both times. Thousands of people eat from just a handful of loaves and fish. It doesn't make sense. Physically, it's impossible for that to happen. And it wasn't just some hippy-dippy, like, hey, let's finally decide to share because he performed a miracle of making us want to share. It's not a Dr. Seuss book, ladies and gentlemen. This is a supernatural miracle that's happening here. All right, so the disciples still are not like, they don't know what this is about. They just know, this guy I'm following around, he's doing some crazy stuff, and we're here for it. Then you get to the Last Supper. First of all, it's the Passover meal. Normally there'd be lamb on the table. There's no lamb. There's a reason for that. He takes the bread, and he says, this is my body. He gives thanks for it, breaks it, gives it to his disciples, and he tells them to give that bread that is no longer his bread, his body, give this body, do this in memory of me, give this to the people. He takes the wine, and he does the same thing. He lifts it to heaven, gives thanks, gives it to the disciples, and he essentially says, give this to the people when he says, do this in remembrance of me. So he's showing them the exact same ritual, the exact same formula that had this absolutely insane miracle happen with the multiplication that defied the laws of physics, that defied logic, defied what you thought you knew about the universe. That same ritual now has an invisible miracle happen, but a miracle nonetheless. And the other thing that preceded, that kind of went smack dab in the middle between the multiplication of the loaves and fish and then the Last Supper, where he showed them how to consecrate the Eucharist, and he instructed them to do that for us, was the bread of life discourse. When Jesus said, eat my flesh and drink my blood. And big crowd of people that he had just fed, supernaturally multiplied loaves and fish and fed thousands of people, they were like, you can't do that. Give us a sign. Show us what you're talking about. And if I were Jesus, I would be so pissed. Like, at that point, what do you mean give you a sign? I just performed a miracle twice that defies the laws of physics. What is this give me a sign business? Jesus re-emphasizes and re-emphasizes, and eventually he just lets them walk away. That's like everyone in the pews that doesn't believe it's the Eucharist. Jesus would just let you walk away instead of letting you think that it is a symbol. He didn't say, wait, come back. It was just a symbol. I know that the way I speak sometimes is unnecessarily confusing, and I'm sorry for that. No. It was the truth, and he stuck to it. And then he turns to his disciples, who were like the only people remaining. He's like, you guys going to go too? And Peter said, where would we go? You have the words of everlasting life. And then it was later, after that they then see the fulfillment of this whole teaching that he was giving them with the multiplications, because he shows them the ritual at the Last Supper. He says, this is my body. So yeah, we really believe it is Jesus. And if there's any chance that the Catholic Church is right, it's kind of a big deal that the God of the universe humbles himself down. What seems, tastes, smells, feels like a piece of bread. It's kind of a big deal that God comes to us that way, in all humility, because he loves us. Father Leo Patalinghug, the expert, all matters food and priestliness. What are your thoughts?
Well, my first thought is, what's so weird about that? I mean, like, this segment's supposed to be like weird, right? No, there's nothing weird about what Jesus did, because everything he did was exactly what Jewish people even to this day do. Bread is key, not only to their faith, but to their culture. And so him breaking bread is what Jews do as part of their Shabbat ceremony, and also as part of celebrating their faith with each other. What's weird is that we don't do that now. we're so if there's any weirdness, is that we're not actually becoming, ready for this word, companions. And the word kumpanis means with bread. We're not actually breaking bread with people.
You just blew my mind.
Exactly. So what's weird isn't what Jesus did, it's what we're not doing. We're not actually becoming bread for other people. And the reason why we're not bread for other people is because we are not experiencing what it takes to make bread. And so let's refer to something that might sound weird, is Saint Ignatius of Antioch, right before he was ready to be thrown into a pit with lions to eat him up. He actually told his disciples, don't stop me. I have prayed to become like wheat ground in the teeth of my enemies.
Wow.
He wanted to become food for other people. And the reason why this is weird is because it requires us to become like wheat, literally crushed. And that word crush is coming from the Latin verb contere, or Latin words contere, which means with the earth. And that's where we get the word contrite.
I love that.
We are not contrite people. We're not sorry for anything anymore, and therefore we're bad in people's mouths to taste because we're just not humble. So the more palatable you are to other people is because you are more contrite, you are more humble, you want to be food for them. Rather, we want to just feed them with ourselves, and I'm sorry, we're not all that awesome. But if we become more like who we ate, more like Jesus, then you're going to be palatable, and people will want to have you in themselves and in their own life. We literally become food for them. Let's take another example. Saint Teresa of Calcutta. She didn't give the Eucharist to everybody because they're Hindu. They're not allowed to receive that. But because she became what she ate, she did give the presence of Christ to other people.
Wow.
Like with just a bowl of garam masala, or just a bowl of curry and chicken and rice, which is delicious, by the way. But if a saint gives it to you, it literally becomes a sacramental.
That's amazing.
So there's nothing weird about what Jesus did. What's weird is what we're not doing, because we're not becoming what we eat, because we're only receiving the Eucharist on our tongue and not on our souls.